This month on Historic Racing News, we look ahead to the Goodwood members meeting.
I think it offers a uniquely special moment. Very much, as you say, pure racing out on track, but a great opportunity for the whole of the membership to come together.
And we will review two books with a distinctly American flair.
It's called It's a New Track Record.
No, how that should be polished. It's a new track record.
That's all coming up on Historic Racing News, where motorsport's history lives. Now, here is your host, Paul Tarsey.
Greetings, and welcome to the April edition of the Historic Racing News radio show. I don't know where the year's going. On the show this month, we hear about the plans for the Goodwood members meeting. And we're going to be talking to Josh Parsons, the manager of the Goodwood Road Racing Club. Jim and I have a look at a couple of new books on a distinct American flavour. And Paul Jurd has done some delving into what happened in the past when Formula One regulations changed. Jim has done some more digging into the auction market, which is very much Jim's forte, and he's had a look at the stateside season. Now that's in full swing, and we'll take a look at the Monaco Historique. Oh, I love that, Historique. And we talk to tour operator Matt Twynham and look at some of the high spots that we're all looking forward to when the Historique comes about.
We find out who won the prize, do we?
Yes, I'm not going to put names to it because they'll get nasty emails, but we do know and they know. So
they do. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, outstanding.
So we're looking forward to seeing them. Yes, lucky listener. They took a bit of tracking down, but eventually we got to them. So that was good. And representing the UK on the show, as always, is Paul Jurd, and Jim Roller is not quite wearing his Stars and Stripes pyjamas this time to play for the USA. But gentlemen, welcome to the show. Jim, what are we talking about Monaco?
The pajamas are better than the prison overalls.
Just saying. I know that you and I have a rendezvous in Monaco later this month, but
yes, we do.
You're going to be doing a little bit of a trip to France before we ever get there.
Yes, the lovely Betty and I will be encamped in Nice for a couple of weeks before you
so
arrive.
Nice in Nice.
Yes, and bump, and we can shut his mic off. Very much looking forward to it. Also looking forward to spending a little time away from a racetrack with you and the lovely Lisa. So we've got a nice bed and breakfast booked in there, and a little sightseeing, a little wine, a little seafood. Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
PJ, you've been looking at how regulations changed, but before we get to that, I'm interested in both of your views about the new regulations in Formula One for 2026. Paul, do you think it's working?
Yeah, okay, so we're 2 races into these new regs. We've got smaller cars, 30 kilo lighter cars. The power units are totally different. It's only 50% from the ICE, the internal combustion engine, 50% from the electrics. You've got smaller tyres. They've got a boost button and everything like that. But yeah, I almost hate to say this because I'm sure I'm going to get abused yet again, second time in one pod. But I'm rather enjoying the races so far, actually. I think what we want to see is, cars overtaking.
Not alone there.
So yeah, cars running close to each other, and every race has featured something. And I know I've seen people go, oh, but they're not as fast through the corners as they were last year. I have never ever left a racetrack going, wow, did you see the corner speeds there? They were fantastic. No, you talk about the overtaking, you talk about the defending, you talk about the cars running close together, and you also hear that the overtaking is manufactured. 'Twas ever thus in Formula One. Someone's going to be on better tyres than someone else. Someone's got the better engine. Someone had, remember KERS, when we had KERS, and someone could press that KERS button for 6.6 seconds, or had that DRS. So unless you want to go to, if you wanted to see it on driver merit, put them in Formula 2 cars. So, but Formula One, global entertainment now. The owners, they want thrills, they want the odd harmless spill, they want personalities, they want eyes from around the world on their product. And let's be honest, we've said this before, we are no longer the target audience.
Well,
it's the new people, it's what they are trying to drag in. And hey, it's early days, isn't it? Everyone's learning how to manage the power around the lap and everything. 6-7 races in, everyone would have figured it out. They'll all be on the boost at about the same time, and we'll be in a whole different scenario. So at the moment, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I completely agree. What do you think, Jim?
I agree with PJ 100%. And Paul, Tarsey, you and I are old enough to remember when at Le Mans you had to regulate your lap, how much fuel you used, how much energy you used in a lap. Nobody complained that they had ruined endurance racing. I've been going back and forth with a couple of our dear friends who I haven't asked them, so I'm not going to name them, who are under the, they've ruined Formula One. It should be flat out all the time and nothing but flat out. It's the pinnacle. It should be racing constantly, and that's it. Well, if you do that, we go back to the good old days when one team figured it out and everybody else was a train behind them picking up the scrap. No, I have the first race. We've also seen in these two races how things are different. The first race, yes, you had a lot of questions about recharging as the car would run out of battery as it got down to the end of the straightaway. And that is problematic. I mean, I will give the purists that. But at China, for instance, it didn't happen, as there were more areas where they could regen the battery, and so they didn't run into that kind of thing as much. But I think Paul Jurd has hit it right on the head. There's always been, since this really became such a commercial enterprise, there's always been, like you say, you go all the way back to KERS, and to be honest with you, I'd forgotten about KERS. I probably just blocked it out. But anyway, I mean, it's always been in the last 2 decades, in the new century, it has always been a bit contrived, the passing.
Yeah, I think for me, you have to remember that motorsport generally, and Formula One is no different, is a team sport. It's not like track and field. It's not like anything where, okay, there's lots of work goes on behind the scenes, but nonetheless, the star is the star. That this is about the designers. This is about how people put it together. And I think my only other thought on this is that if you put somebody like Mike Hawthorne, I mean, if you could, in the time machine, in a modern Formula One car, he'd be a minute off the pace, because the drivers these days, or the driving job these days, is very much more cerebral, that they have to think hard about what they do, that in the 50s and 60s you drove your balls off as fast as you possibly could, and that was what it was all about. And nowadays they have to think a lot more, and I don't think that's bad.
Well, and I think I agree with you. I don't necessarily think that's bad either, but I had someone, Peter Windsor, the PR person, pundit person who's been involved in Formula One his entire career. When he was with Williams and I was a young cub reporter at Watkins Glen in the late 70s, early 80s, sat me down and told me that Formula One was not racing, it was a technical exercise.
Interesting.
And I went, then why do they have a green flag and a checkered flag? And, I mean, there are elements of folks who have been fans of Formula One that would just as soon have the engineers running the race with joysticks from the So yeah, I mean, you could, we could get 8 people on this podcast and have 8 different opinions, and none of them would be wrong, because Formula One is, during the year, 5 years ago, when I was sitting there watching Formula One and Max Verstappen was winning everything and nobody could touch him, my wife would go, why are you watching this? It's so boring. And I says, because I've watched it my whole life. And eventually it won't be boring. And she watched the first 2 races of the year, because she often watches the races with me. She goes, wow, you're right. This isn't boring anymore. And I went, there you go. So.
And I don't think the Betty's alone in that sentiment. But,
no.
But I mean, obviously, rules have changed over the years, many, many times, and in some ways to a greater extent than we've had now. And Paul, you've been having a look at some of the rule changes over the years.
Yeah, I have. And I think your key phrase there was some of the rule changes, because it starts off quite simple. There aren't actually that many rules when you stop and look at what's happening in the early days, and then you get up to the fact that rule changes
better.
Year by year, we could spend a year of pods going through all the rule changes. So I went through and sort of picked out the key ones, usually revolving around engines, funnily enough, and also just a couple of others that were points where that was still illegal till then, items sort of thing. So obviously first rules actually came out in 1948, but we didn't have a Grand Prix and a proper World Championship until 1950, and it was all about engines. It was 1500cc with a supercharger or a turbo. If I think it's more superchargers, certainly in those days, 4.5 litres naturally aspirated. You gotta love a big engine, isn't it? Other thing, no weight limit. You could have that car as light as you could make it, and they were really, really quick cars for their time, to be quite honest, and spectacular. Hence, the huge crowds will turn up. And so that was from 1948 through to 1952. Crash helmets had to be worn. You have to wear a crash helmet. But amusingly, the regulation does not say what it has to be made of. See, as long as you've got something up there protecting that head, it could be anything. So hence the leather helmets that we see, and etc., like things like that. End of the 53 season, the only people who actually had cars for the next year that would conform to the regs were Ferrari and BRM. And as we know, the BRM was not the most reliable of cars at the time. So in a switch, Formula 2 became Formula 1. The Formula 2 regulations became the Formula 1 regulations. Again, it was 1500cc with a supercharger, or 2.5 litre naturally aspirated, which is actually what everyone ran, the 2.5 litre engines. Nice, simple engines. Again, no weight limits. And I love the cars of that period. Your Maserati 250F, all of those cars. I think they look absolutely beautiful. And I'm of an age as well when I'm fairly sure my first ever sort of Scalextric, I don't think it even was Scalextric, those were the cars, those front-engined cars. And those rules stayed through right up until the 1960s with some great drivers involved. One key change, 1958. There were not a lot of rules. There was no actually rules on what fuel you were using, and you were getting more and more potent combinations. And there were stories of the crew having to wear goggles and masks to fuel the car. So in 58, it was decided everyone had to be on the same fuel everyone all the time, and they hunted round to figure out, because 4-star in the UK is different to 4-star in France. It was different to what you get in the US. I'm sure one of you two will know this. What fuel did they adopt?
Aviation gas.
It was avgas. It was turned out to be the one fuel that you could. It was exactly the same all over the world. So yeah, for the final part of the 1950s, right up to the 1961 season, yeah, they were actually running on aviation fuel. That 61, yeah, another engine change. See, we're already into a whole sequence of engine changes. And oddly enough, it's we think of them back now as 1500cc cars. In fact, the rules say 1300 to 1500. I don't see why anyone would want to go smaller. It doesn't really seem to work, to be quite honest. And for the first time,
size does matter. Just saying.
Yeah, good point. And a minimum weight for the first time, a whole 460 kilo. That's the same weight as a classic Formula Ford 1600 these days. Your classic Formula Ford is pretty much the Formula 1 car of. Yeah, you don't think that, do you?
Great analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I typed out the weight and I thought that rang a bell from somewhere, so I looked it up. And you had to have a roll bar protecting the driver. More of that later, because that one comes back to bite us a few times. And also in 1961, the first rules came out for the flags. saying what the flags had to, what flags you had to use and what they mean. I cannot find out what was used before. Did it vary by the country or anything? Does anyone know this?
I don't know. I've never heard that before.
It implies that it was not consistent. So
probably two fingers up in some countries.
Yeah, you were going to pay attention in the driver briefing, weren't you, to see what the blue flag meant this week?
Yeah.
And for the first time, we did actually specify what your crash helmet had to be made of. So it had to be made of something decent, and overalls were a requirement. And again, they had a little bit of a specification coming in there. 61, I love the cars from that 1961 up to 65. Those beautiful little precision cars. They were fantastic bits of kit. But there was a feeling only 1500 cc weren't that powerful. So it was decided bigger engines were the way to go. So from 1966, it was that famous return to power of, essentially it jumped to 3 litres again. Not what the teams wanted. They wanted 2.5 litres. So they said to the FIA, we'll have 3, expecting to get knocked down. And they didn't. And they ended up, everyone had to scurry around and find the 3 litre engines that they didn't actually have. So,
except Ford.
It was on the way, wasn't it? It was on the way.
Was.
Yeah, minimum weight, the minimum weight only went up by 40 kilo to 500 kilos. Despite a much bigger engine in the back. I mentioned the roll bar. For that 66 season, the roll bar had to be higher than the driver's head. There's an idea.
It's a problem for Dan Gurney and Graham Hill.
Exactly, yeah, big lads.
But you look at the roll bars, even on historic cars now, and there'll be a sort of an inch piece of metal, and they're supported and that they are probably going to do the job to a greater or lesser extent if the car rolls over. If you look at the photographs of things like the shark-nosed Ferrari in 61, or any of the Lotuses or Coopers, it's a tiny little, it's something that you would have for the radiator in your bathroom. That it's a tiny little piece of tubular steel.
Almost more a headrest than it was a roll bar.
Yeah. You have to have a roll bar, as you said about the crash helmets. You have to have a crash helmet. Oh, I'll put this woolly hat on, and that with roll bars, I don't think there was any regulation as to what it had to be. And if you look at a photograph of anything from the very early 60s, when they did have to have them, it's laughable.
It is, and this whole safety thing. It was actually only in the late 1960s that they banned having straw bales at the side of the track to mark out the circuit, or to provide a level of protection. And that was after poor old Lorenzo Bandini's crash at Monaco. And the engine regs really actually stayed, as we know, for many years, right into the 80s. But there were a few changes. In 1970, spectators had to be 3 metres behind the barrier at the side of the track.
3 metres?
Yeah. And I thought, yeah, really. And I saw a picture. I saw a picture of Spa in 1967, and you're looking at it and you go, yep, they're right by the side of the track, aren't they? And this is Spa, so quick down there. Also, in going into the 1970s, it was decided you really did have to have a barrier between the track and the pit lane. So that was now compulsory, that there had to be some sort of pit wall. So lots of safety things coming up. 71, drivers out of cockpits in under 5 seconds. And for the first time, a rule on the length of races. No race over 200 miles for a Formula 1 Grand Prix. So up until that, again, it was a bit variable. 1974, 2x2 grids. Which seems, we are so used to that 2x2 grids, 12 metres around the car, big space. You go back and you look at some of the 1960 Grand Prix, isn't it? It's three rows. And literally right up the exhaust pipe is the second row with 2 cars on it.
And sometimes 4 cars abreast.
Yeah. If the track was wide,
3-2-3, wasn't it? Wasn't it 3-2-3?
Yeah. Mostly, but you did see. I mean, Silverstone used to run 4-3-4.
Ah, okay, yeah, because they had the width. Sure.
Yeah.
And actually, looking up on this, I had completely forgotten this one. Do you remember dummy grids? Yes. The dummy grid where the cars would form up about a couple of 100 yards back and then all roll up into their slot and then go.
Yes, that's right.
There was no formation lap. It was just a dummy grid. You rolled up, spun your tires, warmed them up,
and off you went.
Off you went.
Yeah, and I'd completely forgotten about that till I was doing some dabbling for this one, to be quite honest. But those were the days.
Yeah. I'd forgotten that. Well done.
Yeah, no, so going through this, there's lots of things I'd forgotten about. Of course, so we still had these 3 litres, but there was always that little bit in the rules about 1500cc supercharged or turbocharged. And up turned Renault in 1977 with their turbocharged engine, Ferrari in 81, that potent BMW by 82. 83 was that last DFE win, Michele Alboreto in a Tyrrell at Detroit. And that was 155 wins for the DFE. So by mid-85, now the whole grid's running turbos. Well, let's come in with some rules for the turbos, shall we? Because they were getting ridiculous. We've heard these stories of, you'd had qualifying engines, didn't you? Which was it, I think, was it around 1,200 horsepower people were claiming for the BMW for a couple of laps? Which is outrageous, isn't it? That's where we are now. I'm proud of it. So 87 and 88 boost pressure down to 4 bar. And if you wanted to, you could run a 3.5 litre atmospheric engine with more of this to come. For 89, that went down to 2.5 bar. They were strangling the turbos, basically. So more and more teams were switching to the Atmo engines, although even in 89, McLaren, Ferrari, Lotus, and some of the other teams still ran at those turbos. Finally, they banned the turbos in 89. 3.5 litre atmospheric engines for everybody. And that went through to 1994. And at the end of 94, that Ferrari V12 was doing 850 brake horsepower at 15,800 RPM. It was apparently the most powerful of the three. You stop and you think about that.
Gear splitting.
Yeah, how they got that to rev and everything. And also in 94, and we talk about the technology we've got in the modern cars. They banned the driver aids. Lots of banning driver aids, lots of unbanning driver aids to come, to be quite honest. So it's active suspension, if you remember the days of the active suspension cars. Traction control, launch control, etc. But, that was suddenly banned. So it was back to basics, in theory, back to it's got to be the driver, not those technological wars. Lots of changes year by year at this point. So really now I am sort of just picking out those highlights. 95 to 2005, a whole 10 years, engines at 3 litres. It's like, yes, we'll make the engines smaller, everyone will go slower. Our survey said, because the very good engineers realised that with a smaller engine, you've got smaller pistons, you've got less momentum going on, you can rev it higher. So we were already seeing 15,800 out of that Ferrari with a 3.5 litre. And across the period of this, the 3 litre engines, they started off, the Renault was revving to 15.2, and ultimately, right by the end, it was 9,000 up to 900 horsepower at 19,000 RPM for most of the engines. Toyota actually claimed to be able to crank their engine up and get over 1,000 horsepower out of a 3 litre engine. Although they couldn't, that was qualifying, they could not run like that in the race, and that's outrageous. Here's one for you, and this is, I think, visually, for me, one of the worst things, one of the things I always hate about looking at that period. Anyone going to guess what happened in 98 to make the cars look absolutely horrible? Grooved tyres. Do you remember the grooved tyres?
Yes.
It started off with 3 grooves on the front, 4 on the back, and then it was 4 all round by 1999. And what a way of controlling it. It was just, who thought of that? There had to have been a better way to try to control corner speeds and things, and let's chunk a great big of the tyre off, so effectively it's a smaller tyre. Make it a smaller tyre then.
You're listening to Historic Racing News as the team looks back on the history of Formula One rule changes.
Paul, just before you go on, you know how I love my my mental arithmetic, that 18,000 RPM is 600 times a second.
It doesn't bear thinking about, does it? To have an engine running like that.
That engine is doing 600 times a second.
The forces that you are accelerating that piston 600 times a second from naught to whatever speed the travel speed of the piston is to stationary again and back is...
You just made my head hurt.
It does. Hats off to the engineering. It was absolutely fantastic engineering. As I say, what they would do. So 98 we had groove tyres. 2000 a rule came in saying no more V12s. Everything has to be a V10. Can't think which team that would have been aimed at, to be quite honest, as to who was still running Ferrari, unfortunately. 2001. Do you remember we mentioned driver aids? Traction control was back.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And why was traction control back? I'm sure you can guess. because they couldn't police it.
Oh, yeah, the people were
They
cheating
could not
already.
prove
Yeah.
whether it was in the software or not. Yeah, it was literally, yes, it was, okay, look, we can't actually tell if you're using it or not, so we're not going to ban it anymore. What is the point? So that's an interesting one. Another one just on safety, because I'm surprised how long ago this was. 2003, the hands device became mandatory. I hadn't realised it was that long ago. And I always associate...
And it was brand new then. Too.
Yeah, I associate the hands device with a gentleman from the US called Jim Downing.
That's who invented it.
I had a lovely conversation with Jim in Indianapolis. It must have been in about 2001, and literally he was carrying a prototype one around. Yeah,
that's when it was coming out.
Yeah, and probably one of the greatest things for motorsport safety, because you see them everywhere in motorsport these days, and nobody thinks a thing about wearing one.
But at the time, when Jim Downing was trying to get it recognised, it was sort of the work of the devil, wasn't it? That drivers were saying it's uncomfortable, and that it's affecting my driving, and da. It's a bit like the Halo, which you may be coming to.
Don't spoil my fun.
But that, that's another one. All right, I'll shut up.
But it's not just race car drivers. I'm old enough to remember in my short playing career of hockey, I was the first generation that grew up playing with helmets.
Yeah.
And then my generation didn't want to wear any face protection for the same reasons that the knuckleheads before us didn't want to wear any helmets. So yeah, it's human nature.
Yeah, but moving on. So new engines, 2006 to 2013. I'd almost forgotten these 2.4 litre atmospheric V8s. Or you could run your previous engine with a rev limiter on it, which was always going to be a loser, wasn't it? Because it's a big lump compared to a 2.4 litre atmosphere. But again, this one's revving, again, up to 20,000 RPM at times. In fact, there was a mandatory rev limit in 2007 of 19,000. But yeah, not the biggest of engines. Hey, 2008, traction control came, traction control went. It was banned again. So again, in 2008, we lost traction control. It's like the Okie-Kokie, isn't it? Traction control in, traction control out. There we go. 2009, we had major changes to simplify the aerodynamics. Again, starting to think about these cars behind. And here it comes. Kinetic Energy Recovery System, KERS, was 2009. You could have an extra 80 brake horsepower for 6.6 seconds every lap. Now we're starting to get towards your energy management that you were talking about there, Jim. And 2011, go on, gents, what happened in 2011? It's another of our old friends cropping up, DRS.
Oh, the pass flap.
Yes, do you remember the fuss about that? Oh, everyone's going to be overtaking everyone else. It's going to be the death of Formula One. And then there were people last winter go, I miss DRS, because everyone had got so used to it. But yeah, all the way back in 2011, we had DRS. And
wow, you don't want to bet with that fact. I didn't think it came in that long ago. Wow.
No, exactly. There were lots of changes. The gap between the wings got smaller and smaller over the years as regulation changes and everything. And 2010, I'd forgotten this one. In 2010, in-race refueling was banned. I didn't even realise it was legal through that period. But yeah, you had to do the race on your one tank of fuel. 2014, we get all the way through to 2021, 1.6 litre hybrid V6 8-speed gearbox. The KERS integrated and now became the MG UK. So the regulations in a way that went through for a long time. Here's a quick one. 2014, I'd forgotten this as well. It only lasted 1 year. Double points for the last race of the year.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
That one sailed completely past me.
That has to be driven by money. That has to, because it wasn't it Abu Dhabi, and that I'm sure that Bernie or whomever was running it at the time said, yes, you can have the last race of the year. You pay 3 times as much as anybody else, but we'll make it special.
Now, strange, because I know that rule from a lot of club championships in the UK, because it's a way of ensuring people turn up even if they've not got a chance of the championship. You give double points.
But in Formula One, you have to turn up.
Exactly.
You don't get your money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, you can see why it came and then it went, basically.
Breach of contract.
Yeah. And there were lots of ongoing changes through this period on the number of engines, gradually reducing to just 3 for the season. And you almost stole my thunder on this one. What did we say hello to in 2018, Paul?
Oh, I couldn't possibly
hello
think.
To the Halo.
It was the hello to the Halo. And again, we look, oh, how horrible do they look? Oh, that's ruined how the cars look. Oh, and then all you've got Roman Grosjean.
Yeah.
Whatever you think about the halo, however long it's been there, that one incident justifies it entirely in my view.
And Fernando Alonso at Spa, who
with the car landing on him.
Yeah, we could make a list.
Yeah, no, I'm very much signed up to that. But Paul, thank you for that. That's a great run through.
Very quickly, 2022, and I'm going to breeze over this because I've got nothing good to say about ground effects. Ooh.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good sign-off, actually. Ground effects, ooh.
You're listening to Historic Racing News, where motorsports history lives.
A couple of weeks ago, we heard the sad news of the death of Bob Tullius. Whilst many people on my side of the Atlantic probably first heard of him in the context of those glorious Jaguar XJR5 Le Mans cars, he was a huge influence on the US racing scene for years. And frequently, Jim, he was with British cars, wasn't he?
He certainly was. And he was more than influential. He was an American racing icon. And part of it was that British affiliation and his racing team. He was co-founder of the famed Group 44 racing team, and he passed away at his home in Port Orange, Florida, last month at the age of 95.
Well, that's an age.
Yeah, he lived a full life, believe me. An American Air Force veteran, he came about his illustrious racing career as many did back in the 60s, almost by accident. He bought his wife a Triumph TR3 in 1960. She seldom drove the car, so he took it to a driving school and then proceeded to win the graduation race with it. At the time, he was a native of Rochester in upstate New York, and at the time he was a salesman for the hometown giant Kodak, the famous film and cameras. Now, this former salesman of the year, and this, remember that later on, transferred to operations in Virginia, and they ended up spending more and more time on his racing when he moved down there. And his Kodak supervisor told him he had to choose one, so he chose racing. And in 1965, along with engineering whiz Brian Firstenow and retired advertising executive Dick Gilmartin, Tullius formed the famed Group 44 Racing, around which most of the rest of his outstanding career was built. Between his driving ability and organizational skills, combined with Firstenow's mechanical talent and Gilmartin's marketing prowess, Group 44 became really the gold standard in motorsports at the time for marketing and on-track victories, and was always marked by that famous backwards 44 on the side of the car.
And I heard a story about that, which was that when he was still racing that Triumph TR4, that his wife was trying to save them money and decided to get a sheet of Fablon and cut out the race number that they were due to have, and which she duly did with a pair of scissors and a big sheet of plastic, and that she presented these to Bob and said, "Oh look, I've done these for you," and he was a bit nonplussed because she'd actually cut them out the wrong way round, so that they were reversed out. And from that very moment, not only was Group 44 born, but the logo, which was the reversed out 44, was born as well, and that carried on all the way through his racing career.
Forever, yes, that was the mark of the team. A team which was most often, as you said earlier, was associated with British manufacturers for most of his career. British Leyland with the Triumphs, and Jaguar, of course. 25 years the team was very successful. It accumulated over 300 victories in SCCA club racing, IMSA GT and GTP endurance events, 14 national championships, and 3 SCCA Trans Am titles. Now, Bob himself drove competitively throughout that time. He appeared in no fewer than 252 races, and his final victory came at the 1986 3 Hours of Daytona in a Jaguar XJR7. Now, the team's most celebrated achievement was its work with Jaguar. along with Group 44, he helped bring Jaguar back to Le Mans for the first time in 27 years. You spoke about that earlier, Paul. Campaigning an XJR5 prototype, the car which Tullius was instrumental in developing. They faced off against the dominant factory Porsches of the era, and they actually won the GTP class at Le Mans in '85. In 1981, Jaguar founder Sir William Lyons personally presented Tullius with the Sir William Lyons Award in recognition of his contributions to the marque.
And that's a huge honour, because Sir William Lyons was patriotic beyond measure, let's say.
Oh, yes, and to give that to an American that spoke volumes about the relationship. Now, it wasn't just British machinery that he excelled in. He won the over 2 liter class for the first ever Trans Am race at Sebring in of all things, a Dodge Dart. He drove the turbine powered helmet cars at Le Mans.
Oh, yes.
You remember those?
I didn't know that.
He was one of the drivers of that, yep. He piloted a Nart Ferrari 512 Double B at Daytona. He ran an AMC Javelin in NASCAR's Grand American Series. And after his long Jaguar partnership concluded, Tullius and the famed Group 44 name teamed with Audi to bring the German firm's famed Quattro race cars to IMSA GTO competition, as well as the SCCA Trans Am. They won the SCCA Trans Am's premier class with Hurley Haywood in 1988. Now, Bob's other passion was aviation. He owned 7 different aircraft, all of World War I and World War II vintage. He frequently piloted his favorite P-51D Donald Duck. Now, the plane was liveried in the tribute to Captain Donald Emerson, the 21-year-old American World War II ace who was killed on Christmas Day in 1944. Bob flew over 1,600 hours in that plane at air shows before he donated it to the London's Royal Air Force Museum in 2003. He was a true Hall of Famer. He was inducted into the Sebring Hall of Fame in 2014, the SCCA Hall of Fame in 2015, the British Sports Car Hall of Fame in 2017, Motorsports Hall of Fame of America in 2018, and most recently he was in the IMSA class of 2025 at their Hall of Fame inductions. So definitely a true American racing legend on the track, but also for the team that he built with Firstenau and Gil Martin and Lanky Fouché and people like that who were long associated with the team.
I have to say that all I know about Group 44 was from afar via Autosport magazine. And, you see the IMSA race reports and everything. And I'm sure there's a huge story here behind it. But I always slightly got the impression that, I'm going to use the word shafted by TWR and maybe Jaguar themselves. He did the groundwork. They got the glory.
There are many in America that would agree with you 100% that he was done badly. And that proved to be the end of that relationship. And one of the reasons he went to the Audi program.
It's an interesting one, Paul, because the cynic in me says, would Jaguar have won Le Mans if they'd stayed with Group 44? Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that answer. That there was a Group 44 car given to TWR to evaluate, but they said, no, we'll build our own.
Bob was a little provincial, and I struggle. While I do think he was done badly by Walkinshaw, I think that Jaguar probably made the best decision for Jaguar, because I think Bob might have been a little too provincial to do the kind of things that you need to do to be successful at Le Mans in the back room.
Do you think that the list of people who were treated robustly by Walkinshaw and by TWR, that could be quite a long list, couldn't it?
That's a big alumni association.
Can I just say, if you're listening and you've been treated badly by TWR, please do get in touch, because we'd love to hear.
TarseyHRN@gmail.com, please. TarseyHRN@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you about all of that. There are lots of ways to keep up with historic racing news. Our podcast, comes out on the first Wednesday of every month. The 2-hour show includes interviews with drivers and other personalities from years gone by, plus news of historic events like the Goodwood Revival and the Silverstone Festival. And Jim Roller keeps us up to speed on happenings stateside and looks at the activities both on and off the track in the USA.
And you can also follow us on our YouTube channel, HRN Chronicles. It's our version of a time machine. We have archive features, exclusive interviews, and behind-the-scenes stories going way back into the history of our glorious sport. Plus, we keep an eye on the latest classic and competition car auction news. It's a place where motorsports history lives.
And don't forget our amazing Facebook page. With over 1 million views a month, it is one of the leading social media channels for the historic racing fan. We feature tales from years gone by, news from around the racing world, and we also take the opportunity to flesh out the stories we cover on our podcasts with photographs and yet more background information.
If you would like to find more editions of the Historic Racing News podcast, try searching Historic Racing News wherever you get your podcasts.
The YouTube channel is simply called HRN Chronicles.
And just search Facebook for the Historic Racing News page.
Now, let's find out what's new in the Historic Racing News library.
Now, from time to time, we get books sent into the Historic Racing News office, which are the domain of probably all of us. But 2 books fell into our grasp recently, and they've both had Jim Roller written all over them. So I've asked Jim to have a look at them. The first one, coming from Evro Publishing, is called Dragster Genesis by Barry John. And before your new rugby fans jump in and say, I didn't know that he was into dragsters. No, it's not that Barry John. It's a different Barry John. And this is a book all about dragsters from the very earliest times. Jim, this is a beautifully illustrated book, isn't it?
It really is. And when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, it's kind of like almost, because it's not a very big book in stature as far as it's not very thick, it's not very big, but it is unbelievably well turned out. Yeah. It is glossy pages, and at first look, the illustrations were they looked basic, but as I looked more, they are stunningly accurate, and the illustrations really make the book. But what the book does is it is almost a definitive history of the NHRA in a very small package. I was shocked as I got into the book and saw just how much they had packed into this little package.
Yeah, you could, as you say, look at it and say it's kind of just a picture book, and the illustrations are superb. They're all side on, and they're quite clinical. They're not action shots or anything, but every single sticker, every single logo is highlighted. It's all there. It's all perfect. You could build a model from this.
Yes, you could. Yes, you could. And the other thing that it is got tons of information. It chronicles every important person in the history of drag racing, starting with Wally Parks, the man who started the NHRA, all the way up through all the great competitors, the early hot rod eras. It explains technical innovations, how the wings work. It's got streamliners from early speed tests. It is very much even talks about Henry Ford and the first automobile. So it has Mickey Thompson. It's got Don Garlits. It has everybody that is all of Don Garlitz's creations are covered in this book. And that's a big list. That's a big list in and of itself. But it covers the other classes as well. It covers pro stock. It has Shirley Muldowney. It has the transition from the front engine dragsters to the rear engine dragsters. And then the book at the end has a very, very cool appendix that John Force, the funny car era, and they call the chapter Evolution. And it starts the first paragraph. Henry Ford's flathead V8 put horsepower into the hands of teenagers. and that's really what started the drag racing craze. And it starts with the average speed of the dragster and fuel consumption, engine power output, which as of 2010 it has listed as almost 12,000 horsepower. That's above that now, probably.
Yeah,
above that now.
Yeah.
Elapsed times, Hill and Schumacher. A lot of what this is quarter mile history. Now, you remember in the mid 2000s, there were unfortunately, some tragedies in drag racing. And it quit being a quarter mile contest, and it's now 1,000 feet. And the reason that is because some of the facilities just frankly the sport had outgrown some of the facilities. So it was going to take the NHRA, who owned most of the facilities, a lot of money, and in some cases it was impossible because they were landlocked by other property owners that wouldn't sell, would only sell at a ridiculous price.
Because they knew how much
because they knew what the situation was. So they took probably the I'm a purist, so everybody else say, well, you're just being harsh. They took the path of least resistance and just shortened it to 1,000 feet. So most of this book details the world of the quarter mile of the NHRA, and I would highly recommend it. It's in the UK. It's £50. It's $70 in America. That's a lot, but I do think it's worth it. I would, if I got this for Christmas, I would be like, oh, cool, thanks.
Yeah, it's not going to appeal to everybody.
No. You either got to be into drag racing or just be a gearhead.
One of the two, and it's a great read, as you say. It's not huge, it's not a big book. It's particularly perhaps not a big book for Evro.
Yes, exactly.
But the production values are right up there.
I was just going to say, it's not a large book, but it has the Evro production quality.
Yeah.
And I think that's why those illustrations are so nice.
I think you're right. £50, called Dragster Genesis, and it's by Barry John, available from Evro Publishing or all good motoring bookstores, and of course online. So do have a look at that. The other book that came in is called It's a New Track Record.
No, how that should be, Paul, is It's a New Track Record. Those, of course, are the words of the great Tom Carnegie, who was the public address announcer at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for many, 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 many years.
You have just made me feel incredibly inadequate. But I've done it in my best English accent, and it was nowhere near good enough. But it's that book. It's called It's a New Track Record by Rick Schaeffer, and it's
Schaefer,
is it? Yeah. You see, I knew I should leave all this to you. It's another Evro book, and this is all about the incredible decade at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yes, it's from the decade of 1962 to 1972. And the subheading of the book is The Incredible Decade of Speed at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Rick Schaeffer is a long-time follower of the IndyCar scene, and so he has done a comprehensive job of covering the decade of 1962 to 1972. And I think that is such an important era because two things happened during that era. Not only did the speeds skyrocket, but that was the era when the Indianapolis Motor Speedway went from front engine roadsters to the rear engine cars. So there was all kinds of upheaval at the Speedway. And I think that the quality of this book is in the depth and the stuff And again, it's in the pictures and the illustrations. The story, of course, is very accurate, as you expect from Schaefer, and it details how the first front engine, the first rear engine cars, and it even goes back into the first. Most people think the first rear engine car was Jack Brabham. Well, the first rear engine cars at the Speedway showed up long before that. Back in the 30s, when they almost looked a little bit like the auto unions that were running at the time in Europe, and so that's all documented in here. The other thing that I found very interesting, being a kind of a student of the 500, it's always been my favorite American race. I've always said that the Indianapolis 500 will always be the greatest spectacle in racing.
Yeah.
The 24 Hours of Le Mans is the greatest race of all. Yeah. But the spectacle of Indy, and there was an era in the 50s and through into 65 when the full 65 was the last time that a roadster was able to start, I believe. There was they failed the team. Jim Hurtubise, I think, failed to qualify with his rear engine car, okay, so he qualified a Novi on the third and final day and got into the race, and that's the last roadster to start. But I digress. The thing that is really interesting to me is there are so many cars that we heard about in history. Many of them brought by the likes of Mickey Thompson, who was in the book we just talked about a moment ago, as a drag racing legend. Well, Mickey was into anything that was speed. It was the Bonneville Speed Trials, the Indianapolis 500, drag racing. He eventually started a stadium truck racing series that was the right along with Supercross kind of thing, in that vein. Yeah. And that was a monster success. But Mickey and Smokey Unick brought some unique pieces of kit to the 500. And for me, I knew of some of them, but I'd never seen them in the pictures like the pictures are here. And I just found that fascinating. Oh, that's what that car looked like. I'd heard about that car, but I didn't, I had never seen it, and just talking to people. It talks about the Granatellis. And of course it goes, it's very much in the vein of the decade books like Quentin Sperling's Le Mans books or John Brooks's new book about 2000 through 2009. It's a year-by-year chronicle of what happened, but also mixed in there are, the oddities that may or may not have been very successful in any given year. So while it goes chronologically, it does, and it talks a great deal about speed and how speed's improved. It was in of course in 1972 they still hadn't broken the 200-mile-an-hour barrier yet, but they got to 195 miles an hour, and the biggest jump of the decade actually happened between 1971 and 1972 when the qualifying speed, it was a new record of 174 miles per hour, and then in 72, I believe it was Bobby Unser. Let me just look real quick. It's right here in the book. Imagine that.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim is actually right now looking it up in the book to see exactly what the figures are at the fantastic appendix at the back of this book.
195.4 was the qualifying speed that he got to, and that was still 5 miles an hour short of 200. In a year later, the first lap of 200 miles happened, but the first qualifying didn't happen until 1977, and that was Tom Sneva with 4 laps over 200 miles per hour. And then at the beginning, so 195 miles per hour in 1972, and in 1962, the pole speed was 150. So 45 miles an hour in just 10 years, when, it had taken probably 30 years to get to 150.
I suppose, in all honesty, that decade that we're talking about there, that started in 1962 and went to 1972, in every form of motorsport, it moved on hugely.
Oh.
And this illustrates that perfectly from the Indy perspective.
Not only the Indy perspective, Paul, but also there were a lot of things that crossed over, because this was, of course, people were experimenting with different power plants. This was the turbine. The turbines were during this time, the Lotus turbines that were fast, a little bit unreliable, and then got outlawed because I think everybody was afraid of them. Yeah. And then the advent of wings. And again, when you see the illustrations of the first cars that had the wings off the back, as opposed to the wing being part, in '69, the Bronner Hawk that Mario Andretti drove, and the two Johnny Lightning Specials that Al Unser won with in '70 and '71. There were rear wings on those cars, but they didn't hang off the back of the car like we're so used to seeing nowadays. They were part of the bodywork. They were like over top of the engine. Well, in '72 is when the Eagle, the Dan Gurney's Eagles, first started to appear, and within a couple of years, the Eagle was the car to have. And in fact, Bobby Unser in '72, there's a great illustration of the Olsenite Eagle, which is probably one of the most iconic liveries in American racing, is on there. And it is unbelievably comprehensive. It shows P.J. Jones, the first to break 150 miles per hour, and then all the way up to going 195 miles per hour around the speedway.
So it's the book is called, and I'm going to defer to my my learned friend. The book is called
A New Track Record,
and it's the byline is An Incredible Decade of Speed at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, 1962 to 1972, by Rick Schaffer, with a foreword by A.J. Foyt. I wonder whatever happened to him. It is also available from Evro Publishing, and a very, very high quality book. Possibly in comparison with what we were just talking about, the Dragster Genesis book, it has a broader appeal. Maybe it's just that's my own personal view, but it's a great book. If you have even a passing interest in Indianapolis, I would thoroughly recommend it. Evro Publishing values, I think, is probably all I have to say about it, because it is a superb book.
Oh, it is, without a doubt, and it is definitely one that, again, like the other, I'd be glad to see it under my Christmas tree.
It's you've either too late or too early, but
well, there's always birthdays and anniversaries.
Well, on that basis, Evro Publishing, and it's available from them. It's £70. It's perhaps not a cheap book, but then when you compare it to lots of others with much less publishing values than this, it's actually a great market. So I think we can actually recommend both of those, Jim.
Without a doubt, I would highly recommend both of them.
You're listening to Historic Racing News, a copyrighted presentation of Historic Racing News in association with White Squirrel Studios. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or usage without the expressed written permission of Historic Racing News is strictly prohibited. That's it for part 1 of Historic Racing News. Coming up in hour 2, we have a full preview of the Monaco Historique Grand Prix And Jim Roller recaps the latest from the collector car auction blocks